3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. This is Victoria Wolders, your Empathy Tales podcast host. And we have been lucky enough to host Jonathan Fehr, who is an amazing author. He has written a number of books, one of which is Skyblind. And last two episodes, we've been featuring him and his reading. He has read from his book called Skyblind, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And today we get to listen to him do his Chapter 3. So if you are interested in buying these books, definitely head on over to Amazon and you can type in his last name, Fehr, put in Skyblind, and you will be able to find him and find his books. He also has written some other books called The Magician's Workshop, Volume 1, and The Magician's Workshop, Volume 2. Well, boys and girls, I hope that today will find you some great storylines and characters to dive into. I do want to mention that some of the information shared in this chapter today may not be the most appropriate for younger audiences, just because there is a little bit of violence that is spoken about. And so for those young listeners, probably best to not listen to this one, but to make sure you stay tuned for the following Empathy Tales podcast episodes. And mom and dad, if you want to listen to it, awesome. If there's a teenager in your house, totally cool. And hopefully anyone who is listening and may have younger audiences around, you might want to put on your headphones now. Okay, well, without further ado, I hope you're all comfortable, and here is Jonathan Fehr sharing a little bit about his Skyblind Chapter 3.
Hey everyone, it is me again, fantasy author J.R. Fehr, here to read you Part 3, or Chapter 3, of my fantasy novel Skyblind. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed the first two chapters, and ready for the conclusion part of my audio reading on this series. Now, I know it might be difficult to stop and not continue on with this, so if you are interested in buying the books, you can find them on Amazon. There is a hard copy version as well as a Kindle version, so feel free to check that out if you are so inclined. Now, back to Chapter 3. So last we left off, our friends Corwin and Taylee had just reconnected with their best friend Tray'o. Now, Tray'o is the one who brought them this mysterious necklace, thinking it was harmless, something he had found in his father's vault. But it turns out that it actually may be some sort of magic relic. And worse, it might actually contain something evil. So this is very distressing to our characters, especially because they believe it belonged to their mother. Why would their mother have something evil? And is it even possible for objects to have even anything in it that's evil? So these are all questions that our characters are trying to wrestle with right now as we pick up Chapter 3. So without any further delay, I will hop right in. Chapter 3, The Master's Tent. Tray'o was torn between a feeling of ecstasy and terror. Not only was he indirectly in possession of what seemed to be a relic, a rare and unusual one at that, but more importantly, he was also in the presence of Taylee Modesto. Even dressed in that cheaply made holiday dress, she was quite beautiful. He loved the way her soft brown hair curled gently around her face and accented her high cheekbones, and the way her smile, so pure and sweet, could light up a whole room. And then there were her eyes, large and innocent when she wanted, but mischievous too, always shifting between greens and browns. Brown for innocent, green for mischief, Tray'o mused. She was everything he'd ever wanted in a woman, and more. They'd been through a lot together, yet somehow she had never seemed to recognize his deep affection. He had silently loved her since the time that he had almost drowned in the mud pit as a child, and she rescued him. The memory of her, so cute and muddy, giggling at his foolish mistake, forced Tray'o to tighten every muscle in his face in order to restrain the grin that threatened to possess his mouth. "You look nice," Tray'o said as he glanced away from her in an attempt to feign indifference. Thanks," Taylee replied politely. "Okay, be calm, Trey. Keep it under control. You could be in a lot of trouble," he ordered himself as he locked eyes on the road. The Crydor markets were in sight now, and Tray'o could almost feel the energy pulsating from behind the famous wooden walls. While Tray'o almost always found the markets to be entertaining, there was something uniquely special about going during midluminous. It was as if the whole area transformed from a ruthless and unforgiving trade town to a thriving world of adventure. Merchants offered special deals, new booths were set up for gambling, and visitors from all across the outskirts were gathered to pay tribute and participate in the festivities. Everyone was unified by this one sacred holiday, and in a kingdom that was often set on individualism, this was a very rare and special thing. On top of all the excitement, they were on a mission to locate Uncle Jael and learn the story behind this mysterious relic. "Do you remember exactly what Mr. Lunchiar said about our mother?" Taylee asked as they came up to the giant wooden gates of Crydor. "No, not really. Just that she gave birth at Pinehouse Castle almost 16 years ago, and that my father put the necklace in the vault." "There must have been more," Taylee insisted. Probably, but it was hard to hear. They were in another room, and they were speaking quietly." "I wish Master Lunchiar was here now so we could ask him ourselves," Taylee complained. There's a thought. "Now that you mention it, he is spending the holiday here in Crydor," Tray'o informed them. "Really? He is?" Taylee stopped and considered that for a moment. "What if... Do you think we could talk to him?" It's possible," Tray'o reasoned. "I mean, if anyone could tell us more about the origins of the relic, it would be him. If he doesn't kill me for taking it in the first place," Tray'o mused. It was in times like this that he was grateful for his guards. "Whoa, hang on," Corwin stepped in front of them. "You can't seriously be considering telling our teacher that you stole a relic from the vault." "I told you, it's not stealing because..." "It's stealing," Corwin snapped. Wow, someone is having a grumpy birthday. Taylee lovingly placed a hand on her brother's shoulder. "Brother, listen, Master Lunchiar has always liked me," she said. "I know he'll understand once we explain how it was just a misunderstanding and everything." "And what if he doesn't understand? What if he tells Lord Ryo?" Tray'o laughed. "My father wouldn't care, as long as the relic was returned. The Lord of Pinehouse is too busy attending meetings in Lightspire to waste time on the affairs of the people he supposedly rules." Even though he knew he shouldn't, Tray'o always found it hard to say his father's title without a tone of mockery. "Master Lunchiar, why didn't I think of this sooner? This could solve everything," Taylee said. From the few encounters Tray'o had in the past with Uncle Jael, he understood why Taylee was reluctant to talk with him. Her uncle clearly loved them, but was a strict and unreasonable man. "I'd say it's worth a shot. His tent is right over there. We could stop by before going to the markets, if you want." Tray'o pointed to a bright, yellow-striped tent outside the town walls. "No, we agreed on taking this to Uncle Jael," Corwin insisted. Taylee groaned in frustration. "Come on, Cor. Tray'o thinks it might contain dark magic. Master Lunchiar knows all about relics, and maybe he knows why our mother had it in the first place. Uncle Jael will be happy we went to our teacher for help." Corwin frowned when he looked from the tent to the crowded streets of Crydor. "Uncle Jael asked us to stay home, so going behind his back and then trying to cover it all up, this just seems like another way we're disobeying." "Fine. Do what you want. Confess and take the blame. That's fine with me. But Tray'o and we're going to take the necklace and go talk to Master Lunchiar. Taylee declared this with all the confidence in the world that Tray'o was going with her. Which, of course, he was. "Taylee," Corwin snapped, "you know we aren't supposed to wander Crydor alone." "But I won't be alone. I'll have Tray'o and his 2 silent sentries. I'm sure you can borrow one if you're so worried about being all by yourself." Corwin narrowed his eyes at her, clearly offended by the implication that he was afraid. Don't worry, Cor. I'll make sure Taylee's safe. We'll just ask some questions, clear some things up. Then we'll meet with you after," Tray'o suggested. Before Corwin could say no, and much to the relief of Tray'o, Taylee argued this case. "So it's settled. Everyone gets their way. Happy or not, we're going." "Fine. But no, I don't approve. When I find Uncle Jael in the markets, I'm going to tell him about all of this." "Go ahead. By then we'll already have sorted everything out and there will be nothing to be punished for, except for maybe you wasting Uncle's time," Taylee giggled as she danced away from him and toward the tent. We'll meet up with you soon," Tray'o promised. Corwin nodded and, without another word, slipped past the gate and into the city. Snapping his fingers with joy, Tray'o chased after Taylee. Now, if only I didn't have these 2 oafs following me around, it would be perfect. Time alone with Taylee was rare, and he did not want to waste this opportunity. Master Lunchiar's tent was quite unique in design. Circular, with yellow-striped canvas wrapped tightly around 3 large beams of wood protruding from a hole in the middle that allowed smoke to lazily escape into the sky. On one side, a triangular hole was cut, and the flap was drawn shut. "Well, Taylee Modesto," Tray'o said with a wink, "shall we see if you're right about your teacher's support?" "I'm rarely wrong, Tray," Taylee smirked at him as she pulled back the tent's flap. Inside, it was dark, and it took Tray'o's eyes a moment to adjust. The only light came from a hole above them, and a small fire pit burning in the center. The tent was decorated with furs and brightly colored pillows, but otherwise it was in pretty simple design. Looks like something a merchant would live in. Tray'o was disappointed. He had secretly hoped a more intriguing atmosphere might spark some romance for the 2 of them. He hadn't even noticed the curled mass of a man lying among the furs. "Uncle?" Taylee exclaimed as she ran over and dropped to her knees. Sprawled flat on his back, Jael Modesto tossed about feverishly. Tray'o could hardly believe it. Why is Jael here? What happened to him? "Rem, get Corwin and bring him back here, quickly," Tray'o ordered one of his guards, who nodded obediently before slipping out the tent flap. Of the 2 guards, Jarv was the better runner, but Rem often proved more reliable. "Taylee," Jael rasped through fits of coughing. "My girl." "Hang on, Uncle. You're sick. We're going to get you help," Taylee said as she held her uncle's head. Jael's eyes were wide with panic as white foam started forming at the corners of his mouth, and he began to vomit. "He's been poisoned." Tray'o could hardly believe it. He and Jael had their differences, but that didn't mean he wanted the man to die. All at once, Jael let out a horrid groan, and all the color drained from his face. His eyes abruptly jerked left and rolled into the back of his head. His right hand clenched into a tight fist. His face suddenly turned purple, and his whole body was sent into violent convulsions. Tray'o had seen this once before and knew what had to be done. "Roll him on his side," Tray'o ordered. Taylee didn't seem to hear him, and instead tried to hold her uncle's thrashing body still. "His side, Taylee, his side! He's choking!" As if paralyzed by shock, Taylee would not hear him, forcing Tray'o to reach over and grab her by the shoulders. "No," she pleaded as Tray'o pried her away so he could get to Jael. "Trust me." He attempted to keep her away with one hand while struggling to roll Jael onto his side with the other. With great effort, Tray'o finally rolled Jael over so that he wouldn't choke on his own tongue. "What's happening to him?" Taylee pushed past Tray'o and retook her position by her uncle's head. "He's seizing. Watch his neck," Tray'o said as he scanned the tent for something, anything that could be used to help. If only there was ocean water. Tray'o recalled that the salt in ocean water could help pass poison through the body. Please, God, don't let him die. Taylee reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded prayer cloth. Uncle Jael doesn't deserve this. Jael continued thrashing, but the coughing and vomiting would not seem to end. He can't breathe. The feeling of helplessness was unbearable. Why won't he breathe? Suddenly, with several desperate gasps for air, Jael lurched backwards and let out a long, painful groan. And just like that, the convulsions stopped. The whole tent was still. Jael's face was still purple, and his eyes were void of life. He's gone? Tray'o thought and sank to his knees. It was as if time itself had stopped. Tray'o struggled to make sense of it. In a matter of minutes, everything had changed, and the world seemed a darker place for it. How could Cyrus allow this? He wondered bitterly. Who would poison Jael? He has no wealth, no secrets, nothing worth killing him for. Nothing made sense. Tray'o tried to clear his mind. Thinking this way usually took him to dark places, and he preferred to avoid any negative mental spiral at all costs. Instead, he focused on Taylee and felt the loss anew through her sorrow. Her knuckles were white from clenching the prayer cloth, and her face was wet with tears. All the joy and innocence that were once a feature of her face now seemed nothing more than a vague and distant memory. Will she ever smile again? Hey, Tray'o wanted to comfort her with his arm, but Taylee shoved him away. No, he's not dead. He can't be dead. Tray'o wanted so desperately to take her pain away, but knew he was powerless to do anything. I'm so sorry, he muttered as Taylee, overcome with emotion, sobbed bitterly into her uncle's shoulder. It's not fair, she screamed. Wake up! Wake up! But there was still no response. Except for the cracking of the fire and the sobs of Taylee, a painful silence hung in the air. Is it because of the relic? I'm the one who used it. Me! Taylee sobbed, a prayer as she clung to Jael's stiff body. Don't punish him because of what I did. I'm so sorry. I took the necklace and accidentally turned it on. I didn't know it was Pliston's magic. I never meant for anything bad to happen. Don't take my uncle, please. Spare his life. Please don't let him die. Hearing her in so much sorrow broke Tray'o's heart. He ran his hand through his hair and tried to think of what to do next, but everything seemed like a blur. How could they go from such happiness to such tragedy in a matter of minutes? If Taylee was still praying, Tray'o couldn't tell. All he could hear was the thumping in his ears from the blood that coursed through his body and the sound of labored breathing. Wait, breathing? Taylee! Tray'o nearly exploded with relief. Taylee, your uncle is still alive. What? She whipped her head around. Look at his chest. Tray'o couldn't believe he didn't notice it sooner. It was subtle, but Jael's chest was slowly rising and falling. Taylee's eyes lit up as she noticed it too. He's alive! For now. The breaths were quite shallow. Tray'o knew he was still at risk. Jarv, help me pick him up, Tray'o ordered. No, Taylee exclaimed. Don't move him. He needs to recover. He can't stay here. Whoever poisoned him could come back. His best chance at surviving this is if we get him to Pinehouse. My father has medicine there, but we have to hurry. Tray'o insisted. The look on Taylee's face indicated that she knew he was right, but wasn't happy about it. Be careful with him, Taylee warned Jarv. Jarv nodded respectfully to her as he gently scooped up Jael in his arms. Without wasting another second, Tray'o peeled back the tent flap. But as his eyes adjusted to the light of the sun, he almost wished they'd remained inside. The low alarm blast of a brass instrument boomed through the air and confirmed that his eyes did not deceive him. The fields that surrounded the Crydor markets were burning. Okay, well, There you go. That is the end of chapter 3. It has been a real joy and pleasure for me to be able to read these 3 chapters to you. If you are interested in reading the rest of the story, you can get this book, Skyblind, through Amazon or through Kindle, if you have one of those. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I've enjoyed reading it to you. I also have another book series called The Magician's Workshop, which you might also be interested in. There are currently 2 books in that series, though we are hoping to do several more. And yeah, I really wish you all the best and look forward to hopefully having the opportunity to do something like this again sometime. All the best to you guys, and talk to you soon.
Well, that was an amazing reading from Jonathan Fehr on Chapter 3 of Skyblind. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us for the last 3 weeks, sharing your stories and sharing Chapter 1, 2, and 3 of your book called Skyblind. Well, boys and girls, thank you so much for tuning in to Empathy Tales. It is December, and we are going to wrap up 2019. I will be back with more Empathy Tales in January, but I'm going to be taking a Christmas break, so you won't be seeing any published episodes for the next several weeks until January. I hope that you will connect with Jonathan Fehr online or through buying his books. And also you can connect with me through mykidslocker.com. Check out Empathy Tales podcast on all the major podcast platforms. I'd love to get your feedback, hear from you, your insights, your comments, and maybe even your stories. Would love to hear your stories or your own Empathy Tales stories. Well, it has been an amazing 2019. There's so many things to be grateful for. I think we've learned a lot since our launch in March, where we truly started to learn a little bit more about empathy and compassion and kindness. We've also learned about perspective taking, mindfulness, and just the journey of living a life with positive narratives. I hope that your last year in 2019 has been beneficial, and I hope that going into 2020 that you're able to set some amazing goals for yourself around compassion and empathy, perspective taking, and mindfulness. Well, thank you so much for joining us since March. And I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas. And until 2020, I hope you too will create compassion, one story at a time. This is Victoria Wolders signing off for 2019. Thank you.